I was walking home from the doctor's appointment, my heart racing with joy. My hearing was finally starting to return. I couldn't wait to share the news with my family, to hug my daughter and tell her the worst was behind us. But at the front door, I heard voices from the living room, my daughter and her husband, talking as if I'd completely broken down. I froze, feeling my joy turn to ice-cold rage, and they were planning to discard me like I was nothing but a burden. But I'm not deaf anymore, and I'm definitely not stupid. Time to restore some justice. Before we continue, please subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. The doctor's words still echoed in my head as I sat in his sterile office, staring at the audiogram results. There's definitely improvement, Mr. Patterson. The nerve damage from your accident, well, I won't lie to you. We weren't sure this day would come. Neither was I. 3 months ago, when that drunk driver slammed into my car at the intersection near the grocery store, the doctors had been brutally honest. Severe acoustic trauma, they called it. Permanent hearing loss is likely. The words had hit harder than the airbag that deployed too late to save my eardrums from the crushing impact. But sitting here now, listening to the faint hum of the air conditioning, actually hearing it for the first time in months, I felt something I'd almost forgotten. Hope. I pulled out my phone as I walked through the hospital corridors, my finger hovering over Jessica's contact. She'd been asking about every appointment, every test result, every small development. "Any change, Dad?" She'd text me religiously. "The doctors say anything new?" Her concern had been my anchor through the darkest weeks. But today felt different. Today felt like a moment that deserved more than a text message. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and hailed a taxi instead. The driver's radio played some talk show I couldn't quite make out. The words still came through muffled, like listening underwater. But it was something. Progress. My daughter deserved to hear this news in person, to see the joy on my face when I told her that maybe, just maybe, things were looking up. The 20-minute ride home felt eternal. I kept touching my ears, testing them against the ambient sounds of the city. Car horns registered as distant bleats, construction work as rhythmic thumping. It wasn't perfect, but it was miraculous compared to the absolute silence I'd endured for 3 months. As we pulled into my driveway, I could see Jessica's car parked next to Derek's truck. Good. They were both home. I wanted to share this moment with both of them, to thank them for everything they'd done while I was trapped in my soundless world. Jessica had practically moved back in to help me, and Derek had handled so many of the day-to-day tasks I could no longer manage easily. I paid the driver and walked slowly toward my front door, savoring every footstep on the gravel, each crunch a small victory. My hand was reaching for the doorknob when I heard it. Voices from inside. Muffled, indistinct, but definitely there. My heart hammered with excitement. I could hear them talking. I paused at the threshold, my hand frozen on the door handle. The voices were getting clearer, more animated. They were having some kind of intense discussion in the living room, their words carrying a weight I couldn't yet decipher. I turned the handle quietly, not wanting to interrupt what sounded important, and stepped inside. I stepped inside quietly, my hand trembling slightly as I closed the door with barely a whisper. The voices from the living room were clearer now, though still muffled like they were speaking through layers of gauze, but clear enough. God help me, clear enough. I pressed myself against the hallway wall, straining every recovering nerve in my damaged ears. The words came in fragments at first, then with devastating clarity. Honestly, can't keep doing this much longer. Derek's voice carried the weight of someone pushed to his breaking point. He needs help with everything now. Getting to the bathroom, cutting his food, remembering his medications. I feel like I'm running a goddamn nursing home here, and I didn't sign up for this. I know, baby, I know. That was Jessica, my precious daughter, the light of my life for 32 years. But the voice that reached my ears was nothing like the gentle, patient tone she used with me. This voice was sharp, irritated, calculating. I've been thinking the same thing. This whole situation is wearing me down, too. My legs felt weak. I gripped the wall for support, my newly awakened hearing picking up every devastating syllable. "What about that place we drove by last week?" Derek continued. "The one on 5th Street? Looked clean enough." "Meadowbrook Care? Yeah, I already called them." Jessica's voice grew more animated, like she was discussing vacation plans rather than my future imprisonment. They have a bed available next month. It's not exactly luxury accommodations, but honestly, at this point, does it matter? He can't hear complaints anyway. They both laughed. They actually laughed. I closed my eyes, feeling something fundamental crack inside my chest. This wasn't just betrayal. This was the systematic dismantling of everything I thought I knew about my family. The timing couldn't be better, Jessica went on, and I could hear her moving around the room, probably pacing the way she did when she was excited. I talked to that realtor from Blackstone Properties yesterday. She thinks we could get at least 450 for this place, maybe even 500 with the way the market's going crazy. Seriously, Derek sounded like he'd just won the lottery. Dead serious. This neighborhood's gotten so trendy with all those young professionals moving in, and you know what that means. The house in Westbrook. Derek's voice was pure greed now. The one we've been dreaming about. Exactly. Jessica clapped her hands together. I could hear the sharp sound carry down the hallway. 4 bedrooms, that gorgeous kitchen with the granite island, the 3-car garage. Remember when we drove through that development last summer? I told you someday we'd live there. The one with the golf course and the country club? That's the one. There's a colonial for sale right now. I've been watching it online for weeks. 620,000, but with Dad's house money and our savings, we could swing it easily. My chest felt tight. That house, I remembered that day. Jessica had made me ride along because she said I needed to get out more after the accident. She'd driven slowly through those pristine streets, pointing out the manicured lawns and luxury cars. Someday, she'd said wistfully. I thought he was daydreaming. Now I realized she'd been planning. How long do you think it'll take? Derek asked. To get him settled and everything? Well, once he's at Meadowbrook, I'll have power of attorney so I can handle the house sale pretty quickly. And I'm thinking we could have the keys to our new place by Christmas. Can you imagine? Christmas morning, in our dream house? What about visiting him and all that? Jessica paused, and when she spoke again, her voice was dismissive. Oh, we'll visit. Holidays, birthdays, the usual. Just enough to look like decent people. But honestly, Derek, once he's there and we're settled in Westbrook, it's not like he'll really know the difference. Half the time he seems confused anyway. I bit down on my tongue so hard I tasted blood. Confused? I'd been processing every financial document, every insurance form, every piece of correspondence that came to this house. I'd been managing my own affairs perfectly well. They just assumed I couldn't because I couldn't hear. Shh! Jessica suddenly hissed, and the room went dead quiet. I think I heard something. The front door, maybe? Footsteps approached the hallway. Jessica's light step and Derek's heavier gait. I quickly straightened up, arranged my face into the blank, slightly lost expression I'd perfected over the past 3 months. The face of a man adrift in silence, dependent on others for everything. Dad! Jessica burst into view, and the transformation was so complete it was like watching someone flip a switch. The calculating woman discussing my disposal vanished instantly, replaced by the loving, concerned daughter I thought I knew. Her entire face lit up with what looked like genuine joy. Her voice pitched loud and clear, the way she'd learned to speak to me. Oh, thank goodness you're home. I was starting to worry when you were gone so long. I looked at her with the same blank confusion I'd shown for months. Tilting my head slightly and touching my ear in the universal gesture of, I can't hear you. Derek appeared behind her, and he too slipped seamlessly into character. Gone was the man plotting my exile. Instead, he gave me the same warm smile, the same patient nod he'd been showing me for weeks. Hey there, Mr. Patterson, he said, though he knew I couldn't hear him. Hope the appointment went well. Jessica's face crumpled into the expression of sympathy that I now realized was completely manufactured. Every furrow of her brow, every concerned glance, every gentle touch, all of it rehearsed, calculated, false. She hurried to the kitchen counter and grabbed our communication board, the white dry erase board that had become our lifeline, as she'd called it through actual tears just last week. I watched her write in her careful, oversized handwriting, How was your appointment with Dr. Rodriguez? Any good news about your hearing? She handed me the marker, and I felt its weight like it was made of lead. My hand was steady, But inside, my mind was screaming. Part of me wanted to write the truth. I heard every word. I know what you're planning. How could you do this to me? Part of me wanted to throw the board across the room and watch their faces crumble when they realized their game was over. Instead, I wrote exactly what they needed to see. No improvements yet. Doctor says nerve damage might be permanent. Need to be patient. I watched Jessica's face as she read my words. The disappointment was there, perfectly performed. But underneath it, quick as a flash, I caught something else. Something that made my blood run cold. Relief. She was relieved that I was still deaf. Relieved that her timeline could continue. Relieved that the man who'd raised her, who'd walked her down the aisle just 4 years ago, who'd mortgaged this very house to pay for her wedding, was still trapped in silence. Oh, Daddy. She reached out and squeezed my shoulder, the same gesture that had been my comfort for months. Her touch felt like ice now. Don't lose hope, okay? Miracles happen every day. Maybe next month will be different. I nodded and patted her hand, playing my part with an actor's precision. The next 3 days were a masterclass in deception, theirs and mine. My hearing continued to improve with each passing hour, sounds becoming sharper, voices clearer, but I maintained my performance flawlessly, shuffling through the house with the same lost expression, pointing to my ears and shaking my head whenever they spoke aloud. And they spoke freely. Oh, how freely they spoke. Tuesday morning, while I sat in my recliner pretending to read a book I couldn't hear them discussing, Jessica was on the phone in the kitchen. Yes, I'd like to schedule a tour of Meadowbrook Care for next week, she said, her voice carrying perfectly to where I sat frozen. My father will need to see the facilities, but honestly, he's pretty much lost in his own world these days. The decision will really be mine. Derek was sprawled on the couch nearby, scrolling through real estate listings on his laptop. Look at this one, babe, he called out. Same neighborhood as the colonial we want, but it's got a pool. Only 50 grand more. Let's not get ahead of ourselves, Jessica laughed as she ended her call. We need to get the old man settled first, then sell this place. But yeah, a pool would be nice. The old man. I gripped my book tighter, my knuckles going white. 3 months ago, I was dad or daddy. Now I was the old man, spoken about like a piece of furniture they needed to move. Wednesday evening brought fresh revelations. They were in the kitchen, cleaning up after dinner. A dinner Jessica had lovingly prepared while making exaggerated gestures to show me she was cooking my favorite pot roast. I sat at the dining room table close enough to hear every word. I talked to your brother today, Derek said, scraping plates. Kevin thinks we should get Dad checked for dementia before we make any moves. Says it'll be easier to get guardianship if there's a medical diagnosis. Jessica paused in her dishwashing. That's actually not a bad idea. Dr. Martinez has been his physician for years. I bet I could convince her that he's been showing signs of confusion since the accident. Has he been? Well, he stares off into space a lot. Doesn't respond when we talk to him. That could be interpreted as cognitive decline instead of just hearing loss. They were planning to have me declared mentally incompetent. The pot roast turned to ash in my mouth. What about his finances? Derek asked. Has he said anything about his will lately? Not since before the accident, but I know he's got about 200 grand in savings plus his retirement accounts, and obviously the house. Once I have power of attorney, we'll be set for life. That's when the idea struck me. Thursday morning, after they'd both left, Jessica for her part-time job at the dental office, Derek for his construction site, I made my way to the small closet in my bedroom where I kept old electronics. In the back, behind a box of Christmas decorations, I found what I was looking for. The digital voice recorder I'd bought years ago for dictating letters when my arthritis was bad. The device was smaller than a pack of cigarettes with 16 hours of recording capacity. Perfect. I spent an hour figuring out how to work it again, my fingers remembering the buttons despite the years. The sound quality was excellent, and the microphone was sensitive enough to pick up conversations from across a room. I tested it by speaking softly from various distances, playing back my voice through the tiny earpiece. This would be my insurance policy. That afternoon when they returned, I was ready. The recorder was tucked in the front pocket of my cardigan sweater, invisible but perfectly positioned to capture everything. I made sure to sit in my usual spot, the recliner that gave me the best vantage point of both the living room and kitchen. They didn't disappoint. I scheduled Dad's appointment with Dr. Martinez for Monday, Jessica announced as she hung up her purse. I'm going to mention the confusion, the memory issues, maybe suggest she run some cognitive tests. What if the tests come back normal? Derek asked. Then we emphasize the hearing loss and how isolated he's become. The important thing is establishing that he needs more care than we can provide at home. I pressed the record button through the fabric of my sweater, feeling it click softly. Speaking of care, Derek continued, settling onto the couch, I drove by Meadowbrook today. Place looks like a prison. Gray walls, tiny windows, old people just sitting around staring at nothing. Perfect, Jessica said without hesitation. The lower his expectations, the easier the transition will be. Besides, it's not like he'll be there long. My blood chilled. What do you mean? Come on, Derek. He's 73 years old, just had a major trauma, and he's basically given up on life. These places, people don't exactly thrive there. I'm thinking 2 years, maybe 3 at most. Derek was quiet for a moment. Jesus, Jess, when you put it like that, don't go soft on me now. We've been planning this for months. You want that house in Westbrook or not? Of course I do. It's just nothing. He had his life. This is our time. I sat there, recording every heartless word, my finger steady on the button despite the earthquake happening inside my chest. They weren't just planning to steal my house and lock me away. They were planning to let me die. But I wasn't dead yet, not even close. And now I had proof of exactly who they really were. The recorder had become my constant companion, hidden in various pockets and positions throughout the house. In just 1 week, I'd captured over 6 hours of their conversations, each recording more damning than the last. But what I heard on Friday morning made my blood run cold in an entirely different way. We need to move faster, Jessica said, her voice tight with urgency as she paced the kitchen. I was sitting at the breakfast table, mechanically eating cereal while she and Derek huddled over paperwork. That appointment with Dr. Martinez is Monday, but I called the lawyer yesterday. He says even with a medical evaluation, the power of attorney process could take weeks. So what are you suggesting? Derek asked, spreading documents across the counter. I'm suggesting we don't wait for official channels. Jessica's voice dropped, but my improved hearing caught every word. Look at these bank transfer forms. They just need his signature. He signs papers all the time without really looking at them anymore. My spoon stopped halfway to my mouth. They were talking about forging my signature. Jesus, Jess, that's actually fraud. Only if someone finds out. And who's going to find out? He can't hear what we're discussing. He barely pays attention to anything we put in front of him anymore. As far as anyone knows, he signed these willingly. I forced myself to keep eating, my hand trembling slightly as I lifted the spoon. The recorder in my shirt pocket was capturing every word, but hearing them plan to steal my life savings in real time was almost too much to bear. What about the house deed? Derek asked. Same thing. There's a quitclaim deed form that would transfer ownership to me temporarily, for his protection while he's incapacitated. Once we have that, we can sell it whenever we want. Exactly. The beauty is, even if his hearing comes back somehow, by then it'll be too late. The money will be in our accounts, the house will be in my name, and he'll be settled at Meadowbrook. What's he going to do? File a lawsuit from a nursing home? They were planning to strip me of everything, my money, my house, my dignity, and they thought I was too broken to stop them. When do you want to do this? Derek asked. This weekend. I'll tell him they're just insurance forms or something routine. He's been signing whatever I put in front of him lately without even reading it. That's when I decided to start fighting back. Saturday morning, Jessica approached me with a manila folder full of papers and that practice smile that now made my skin crawl. Dad, I need you to sign some paperwork, she said loudly, setting the folder down in front of me and grabbing our communication board. She wrote, insurance forms and bank updates. Need your signature on a few pages. I looked at the papers she'd arranged. Bank transfer forms, a quitclaim deed, a document that looked suspiciously like a power of attorney authorization. I could read perfectly well, but I let my eyes wander vaguely across the pages as if I couldn't focus. Then I did something that surprised even me. I knocked over my coffee cup. Oh no. Jessica jumped back as coffee spread across the table, soaking into the carefully prepared documents. Dad, be careful. I looked up at her, and this time I didn't bother hiding anything. My expression was calm, cold, and completely aware. Actually, Jessica, I said in a normal voice, watching her face drain of all color, I've been very careful. Careful enough to hear every single word you and Derek have said for the past 2 weeks. Jessica's mouth fell open. The papers slipped from her trembling hands. That's right, I continued, standing up slowly and pulling the small recorder from my pocket. Every conversation about nursing homes, every plan to steal my house, every discussion about forging my signature and having me declared incompetent. All of it recorded. Dad, you were just what? Planning to rob me blind and leave me to die in some hellhole while you lived in my house? I pressed the play button on the recorder. Jessica's own voice filled the room. These places, people don't exactly thrive there. I'm thinking 2 years, maybe 3 at most. Jessica sank into a chair, her face white as paper. Here's what's going to happen now, I said, my voice steady and controlled. You're going to sit down, shut up, and listen while I tell you exactly how this is going to go from now on, because the game just changed, and I'm the one holding all the cards. Derek rushed into the kitchen at the sound of Jessica's shocked gasp. What's going on? Why do you look like... He stopped mid-sentence when he saw me standing there, recorder in hand, very much in control. Hello, Derek, I said pleasantly. I was just explaining to my daughter that I've heard every word of your little conspiracy. Would you like to hear some highlights? I pressed play again. This time it was Derek's voice. Only if someone finds out. And who's going to find out? He can't hear what we're discussing. Derek's face went from confusion to horror in seconds. Surprise, I said, clicking off the recorder. Not only can I hear perfectly well, but I've got 6 hours of recordings documenting your plans to defraud me, steal my property, and have me falsely declared incompetent. That's elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, and attempted theft. Federal crimes, Derek. Weren't you just worried about jail time? Both of them stood frozen, staring at me like I'd risen from the dead. Now, I continued, setting the recorder carefully on the counter, you're going to sit down and listen very carefully to what happens next. Because your little game is over, and it's time to play by my rules. The silence stretched for what felt like an eternity. Jessica and Derek stood frozen in my kitchen, their faces cycling through shock, disbelief, and growing panic. I could practically hear their minds racing, searching for some explanation, some way to talk their way out of this. Jessica was the first to break. Dad, you don't understand, she stammered, her voice shaking. We weren't trying to hurt you. We were trying to help. You've been so lost since the accident, and we thought... You thought what? I interrupted, my voice calm as steel. That I wouldn't notice you planning to steal my house? That I wouldn't hear you discussing my death like it was a convenient business arrangement? Derek stepped forward, his hands raised as if he could somehow calm the situation. Mr. Patterson, I know how this sounds, but we were genuinely worried about your care. Those nursing home conversations, we were just exploring options for your future. I let out a short laugh. My future? Derek, I have the recording of you saying, and I quote, these places, people don't exactly thrive there. I'm thinking 2 years, maybe 3 at most. That sounds less like concern for my care and more like you waiting for me to die. Derek's face flushed red. That's not, I didn't mean. What did you mean then? I asked, tilting my head, because what I heard was my son-in-law calculating how long he'd have to wait before I was out of the picture permanently. Jessica tried again, desperation creeping into her voice. Daddy, please. We've been under so much stress, the financial pressure, taking care of you, Derek's job situation. We said things we didn't mean, but we love you. We would never actually what? Forge my signature? Because I have recordings of you planning exactly that. Never steal my money? Because I watched you prepare transfer forms. Never lie to doctors about my mental state? Because Derek's brother Kevin was very helpful in explaining how to manipulate the court system. Both of them went pale. They'd forgotten about the Kevin conversation. You've been planning this for months, I continued, my voice growing harder. This wasn't stress talking. This was calculated, premeditated elder abuse, and you were so confident that your deaf, broken old father couldn't stop you. Derek's panic was transforming into something uglier now. His jaw tightened, and I could see him trying to reassert some kind of control. "Okay, fine," he said, his voice getting louder. "So you heard us. So what? You think those recordings are going to hold up in court? You think anyone's going to believe you recorded us without our knowledge? That's illegal in some states, you know." Jessica looked at him in horror. "Derek, stop." But Derek was spiraling now, his desperation making him reckless. "And even if they did believe you, what are you going to do? Call the police on your own daughter? Take your family to court? You think you have the strength for that kind of fight at your age?" I watched him with the calm detachment of someone who had already won. "Go on." "You won't do it," Derek continued, pointing an accusatory finger at me, "because at the end of the day, we're still family. Jessica is still your daughter. You raised her, you love her, and you're not going to destroy her life over some conversations." Jessica was shaking her head, trying to get Derek to stop, but he was past listening. "Besides," Derek pressed on, "who's going to take care of you now? You think you can manage this big house all by yourself? You think you can handle your medications, your appointments, your daily life without help? You need us, whether you want to admit it or not." I let him finish his rant, then picked up the recorder and turned it slightly, showing them the red recording light that was still blinking. "Thank you, Derek," I said pleasantly. "That was actually very helpful. Threats, emotional manipulation, and attempting to coerce an elderly person into compliance. That's going to play beautifully for the prosecutor." Derek's face went white as he realized what he'd just done. Jessica sank into a chair, her head in her hands. "Derek, you idiot. Just shut up. Please, just shut up." "But here's the thing," Derek, I continued, my voice never losing its calm tone. "You're absolutely right about one thing. Jessica is my daughter. I did raise her. I taught her right from wrong, respect for others, the value of honesty and integrity." I paused, looking directly at Jessica, "which makes what you've done so much worse, because you knew better. Every lesson I tried to teach you about being a decent human being, and you threw it all away for a house in Westbrook." Jessica looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "Daddy, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. We can make this right." "Can we?" I asked. "Can you unplan my death? Can you unforge my signature? Can you take back calling me the old man like I was already dead?" Derek was still trying to salvage something. "Look, Mr. Patterson, maybe we got carried away. Maybe we made some mistakes. But you can't seriously be thinking about pressing charges. We're family. Families work things out." I looked at both of them for a long moment. These two people who had shared my home, eaten my food, accepted my care and love, all while planning to betray me in the most fundamental way possible. Then I smiled. It wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't a forgiving smile. It was the smile of someone who had just been underestimated for the last time. "You know what, Derek? You might be right. Maybe I won't be able to go through with it." Relief flickered across both their faces. "But then again," I continued, my smile growing wider, "I guess we'll just have to wait and see, won't we?" The relief died instantly, replaced by something much more frightening, the realization that they had no idea what I was capable of, and no control over what happened next. The fear in their eyes was almost satisfying. Almost. But I wasn't done yet. Not even close. I walked over to the kitchen drawer and pulled out a manila folder that had been sitting there for the past week, hidden in plain sight among the household bills and junk mail. Jessica and Derek watched my every movement like cornered animals. "You want to know what I've been doing while you two were planning my demise?" I asked, setting the folder on the counter with deliberate care. "I've been busy too." I opened the folder and pulled out the first document. This is a letter from Anderson and Associates, my attorney. You remember Mr. Anderson, don't you, Jessica? He handled your mother's estate. Lovely man. Very thorough. Jessica's face went even paler. "Dad, what did you?" "I'm talking now," I said sharply, and she immediately shut her mouth. Mr. Anderson was very concerned when I told him about some suspicious activity around my finances, people trying to access my accounts, questions about power of attorney, family members suddenly very interested in my will. I pulled out another document. This is my new will, signed and notarized 3 days ago. Guess whose names aren't in it anymore? Derek's knees actually buckled slightly. He grabbed the counter for support. Every penny I have, every asset, every investment, it's all going to charity now. The American Cancer Society, the local children's hospital, the animal shelter your mother used to volunteer at, people and organizations that actually deserve it. Daddy, please. Jessica started, but I held up my hand. I'm still not finished. I pulled out a bank statement. This is confirmation that I've moved all my accounts to a different bank, one where neither of you are listed as emergency contacts, beneficiaries, or have any access whatsoever. The house is in a trust now, too. Ironically, it's for elder abuse prevention. The folder still had more papers. I was thorough. This is a copy of the police report I filed yesterday. Elder abuse, conspiracy to commit fraud, attempted theft. Detective Morrison was very interested in my recordings. Apparently, they see this kind of thing more often than you'd think. Derek's face had gone from pale to green. You called the police? Oh, Derek, I did so much more than that. I pulled out another document. This is a restraining order petition. I'm filing it Monday morning. Once it's approved, neither of you will be allowed within 500 feet of me or this property. Jessica was crying now, ugly sobs that shook her whole body. Dad, please, we can fix this. We were wrong. We were so wrong. Please give us another chance. A chance. I looked at her with genuine curiosity. Jessica, you planned to have me declared mentally incompetent so you could steal my life savings. You were ready to forge my signature to steal my house. You discussed my death like you were planning a vacation. What exactly would you like a chance to do? We can make it up to you, Derek said desperately. We can take care of you properly. We can take care of me, I laughed, but there was no humor in it. Derek, you literally said taking care of me made you feel like you were running a nursing home and that you didn't sign up for it. You want to know what you did sign up for? Prison, because that's where you're headed. We'll leave, Jessica said suddenly, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. We'll pack up and go. You'll never see us again. Just please don't press charges. Please. I considered this for a moment, tilting my head as if weighing the option. You know what? You're right about one thing. You will be leaving. You have exactly 48 hours to get your belongings out of my house. After that, anything left behind becomes mine to dispose of as I see fit. A flicker of hope crossed Jessica's face. But here's what's not negotiable, I continued, my voice turning ice cold. The police report stands. The restraining order gets filed, and if either of you ever, and I mean ever, tries to contact me, approach me, or so much as breathe a word against me to anyone, I will release every single recording I have to the internet. Their faces went white again. That's right. 6 hours of audio of you two planning to rob and abandon your elderly father. Your voices, your names, your conspiracy laid out in excruciating detail. Imagine how that would play on social media. Imagine what your friends would think, your coworkers, your future employers. Derek was shaking now. You wouldn't do that. You wouldn't destroy your own daughter's reputation. I stared at him for a long moment, then reached into the folder one more time and pulled out a printed screenshot. This is my Facebook page, Derek. I've been updating it regularly with news about my recovery. Hundreds of friends and family members have been following my progress, sending well wishes, checking on my health. They're all so concerned about my well-being. I let that sink in. Now imagine their reaction when they learned that my own daughter and her husband were plotting against me while I was vulnerable. Imagine the comments section on that post. Jessica was hyperventilating now. Dad, please, I'm begging you. We'll disappear. We'll never bother you again. Just don't ruin our lives. Ruin your lives? I asked, genuinely surprised. Jessica, you tried to ruin mine. You wanted to strip away my home, my independence, my dignity, and my remaining years on this earth, and you're worried about your reputation? I closed the folder with a snap. Here's the deal, and it's non-negotiable. You have 48 hours to pack and leave. You will not take anything that doesn't belong to you. You will not contact me again for any reason. You will not badmouth me to anyone, not family, not friends, not strangers on the street. If you follow these rules, the recordings stay private. If you break even one of these conditions, I pulled out my phone and showed them the screen. I had the audio files queued up, ready to post. One click, and the whole world knows exactly who you really are. Derek collapsed into a chair, his head in his hands. Jessica was still crying, but now it was the quiet, defeated sobbing of someone who knew the game was over. "Why?" she whispered. "Why are you being so cruel? I'm your daughter." I looked at her, really looked at her, for what I knew would be the last time. "You stopped being my daughter the moment you decided I was worth more dead than alive," I said quietly. "What I'm being now isn't cruel, Jessica. It's just." I turned and walked toward the door, then paused. "Oh, and one more thing. If you're thinking about trying to challenge the will or claim I'm not mentally competent to make these decisions, remember that I have recordings of you admitting that I'm perfectly lucid. Your own words will be used against you in court." I left them sitting in my kitchen, surrounded by the wreckage of their greed and the consequences of their choices. They couldn't help themselves. I should have known they wouldn't go quietly. 3 weeks after they'd slunk out of my house, the phone calls started. Jessica's Aunt Linda called with barely concealed accusation in her voice. "Tom, Jessica says you threw her out over some misunderstanding about your care. She's telling everyone you've become paranoid and cruel since the accident. Maybe you should get some help." I listened to Linda repeat Jessica's rehearsed story, a confused old man who'd misinterpreted his family's loving concern. They'd painted me as the villain. "Linda, before you say another word, I think you should hear something." I played the recording. Jessica's voice filled the room. "These places, people don't exactly thrive there. I'm thinking 2 years, maybe 3 at most." The silence stretched for nearly a minute. "Oh my God. Tom, I had no idea. I'm so sorry." That was just the beginning. Over the next few days, I received similar calls from family members and friends, all initially suspicious of my cruel treatment of Jessica, all singing a different tune after hearing the recordings. My nephew Marcus called back hours later. "Uncle Tom, I shared that recording with the whole family group chat. Everyone knows the truth now. Jessica and Derek won't be welcome at any family gatherings." Derek's coworker Jake had been planning an intervention after Derek claimed his crazy father-in-law went senile. After hearing the recordings, "I'm forwarding this to everyone Derek works with. Nobody should be scammed into giving that piece of garbage money." Mr. Anderson advised that while I couldn't post recordings publicly, I could share them privately with anyone who approached me with concerns. Word spread fast. Jessica's story collapsed once people heard their actual voices planning my exploitation. Their church asked them to stop attending. Pastor Williams called to apologize. What they planned goes against everything we stand for. They're not welcome here anymore. Meanwhile, my life had taken a remarkable turn. Dr. Rodriguez confirmed my hearing had returned to 80% capacity, a recovery he called nothing short of miraculous. With Jessica and Derek gone, the house felt lighter. I hired cleaners to scrub away their presence, redecorated Jessica's room into a home office, and returned to consulting work. I started hosting poker nights again, joined community theater, and began dating Margaret, a widow whose company I genuinely enjoyed. 6 months later, Margaret asked the question I'd been expecting. "Do you ever miss her?" "I miss who I thought she was," I said, "but that person never really existed. The real Jessica could plan my death over coffee and discuss stealing my house like a business transaction." I received one final letter from Jessica, full of self-pity and justification. She claimed they'd been driven to desperation and begged forgiveness. I read it twice, then fed it into my shredder. Some betrayals are too fundamental to move past. Some people reveal their true nature so completely that you'd be a fool to give them another chance. I learned something valuable. Sometimes the people who claim to love you are the ones you need to protect yourself from most. But I also learned I was stronger than I'd imagined, smart enough to outmaneuver people who thought they held all the cards. My hearing may have been damaged in that accident, but my survival instincts were working perfectly. Now, at 73, I'm living the life I want, surrounded by people who genuinely care about me, free from manipulation, blessed with the peace that comes from knowing exactly who I can trust. Sometimes the best justice is simply living well. To hear the next story, click the box on the left. And as always, thank you for watching.